With about 65 submarines in its arsenal, Russia has long positioned itself as one of the greatest undersea threats in the world. Moscow knows the psychological value of submarines, how the very possibility of a silent vessel lurking nearby, armed with torpedoes or even nuclear missiles, can intimidate adversaries. It's the ultimate form of power projection. But power means nothing when the machines that carry it start to fail. That's exactly what has just happened, and Vladimir Putin is facing humiliation once again. On September 28, reports emerged that a Russian Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine had broken down in the Mediterranean Sea. The vessel in question, the Novorossiysk, is part of Russia's Black Sea fleet and had been sent toward the Mediterranean for combat duties. Whatever its mission was, it doesn't matter anymore. The submarine is now crippled, suffering a catastrophic technical failure that has left it dead in the water. The problem is not just technical, it's potentially fatal. Early reports suggest the issue involves a massive fuel leak that has rendered the Novorossiysk little more than a floating coffin. The crew of 52 sailors may be sitting on a ticking time bomb. If the fuel ignites, the 242-foot submarine could explode, sinking with everyone on board. The situation is dire because the crew can't fix the problem themselves. According to reporting, the submarine surfaced near the Strait of Gibraltar, but nobody on board has the expertise or equipment needed to carry out such a major repair. Even if they did, the spare parts simply aren't there. Russia is now racing against time, scrambling to save the vessel before it goes up in flames. A Russian telegram channel, VCHK-OGPU, revealed further disturbing details. According to its sources, fuel is leaking directly into the hold. With no spare parts and no qualified specialists, the crew is powerless. They may have sealed the hold to contain the problem, but that creates another risk: toxic fumes. Breathing diesel vapors in confined spaces can cause headaches, dizziness, even unconsciousness. Long exposure can shut down the lungs and heart. So even if the fuel doesn't ignite, the crew could still die slowly from poisoning. For now, the only option may be to pump the fuel out into the sea. That could prevent an explosion, but it would also cripple the submarine further, since the diesel would no longer be usable, and there's always the danger that pumping out fuel could itself trigger a spark. The Novorossiysk is essentially a floating powder keg. The location makes this even more humiliating for Russia. NATO nations dominate the Mediterranean. What was supposed to be a silent threat against them has turned into a stranded vessel barely clinging to survival. Instead of projecting power, Russia is exposing weakness. This disaster has echoes of the Kursk tragedy in 2000. Back then, a faulty torpedo detonated inside the Oscar II-class submarine, sinking it and killing all 118 sailors on board. That incident stained Putin's very first year in power, not only because of the disaster itself, but because of his refusal to accept international help. Fearing Western eyes on Russian nuclear secrets, Putin turned down offers of rescue. The result was mass death. Today we may be watching history repeat itself. The Novorossiysk hasn't exploded yet, but if it does, the loss could be catastrophic. Even if NATO or other Western nations were to offer assistance, it's almost certain that Putin would refuse, just as he did in 2000. Accepting help from NATO would mean humiliation, and Putin would rather risk losing a crew than admit weakness to the West. This isn't an isolated embarrassment. Russia's Navy has been stumbling through a series of mishaps. In August, one of its missile corvettes, the Vyshny Volochyok, collided with a civilian tanker in the Azov Sea, sustaining visible hull damage. Moscow first tried to spin the story as damage from Ukrainian drone attacks, but photographs quickly revealed the truth. The Novorossiysk's failure is even worse because it's not an old Soviet relic. This submarine was laid down in 2010 and officially entered service in 2014. Barely 11 years old. It was supposed to represent the modern face of Russia's diesel-electric submarine fleet. It carries 18 torpedoes and has the capability to launch missiles or mines. Earlier this year, it was even deployed to the English Channel in a show of force, surfacing deliberately within striking range of the UK and France. NATO closely shadowed it then, with ships and helicopters monitoring its every move. That mission was meant to send a message. Russia's submarines can go wherever they want. But only a few months later, the same vessel is stranded, disabled, and leaking fuel. The underlying problem is clear. Russia's Navy is falling apart. Years of sanctions, poor maintenance, and dwindling technical expertise are taking a toll. Russia has been sending out vessels that should be in dock for repairs, exposing just how thinly stretched its forces really are. Even its most advanced submarines are showing cracks. In 2024, the Yasin M-class nuclear sub Kazan docked in Havana, where photographs revealed soundproofing panels peeling off its hull, an embarrassing flaw for a supposedly stealth vessel. Analysts said the damage would make it easier to detect and track, undermining its very purpose. If Russia's newest nuclear subs are deteriorating, what does that say about the rest of the fleet? Compounding this, Russia has lost key logistical support in the Mediterranean. The fall of the Assad regime in Syria deprived Moscow of access to the Tartus naval base. Without it, any rescue or repair missions now face the daunting task of sailing all the way around Europe just to reach the Novorossiysk. Even then, it's doubtful Russia has the spare parts or specialists to fix the problem. The loss of Tartus is strategic, but the Novorossiysk incident shows how operationally crippling it has become. The bigger picture is grim. NATO analysts and Western outlets have been warning for years that Russia's navy is more of a paper tiger than a true superpower fleet. Submarines that can't be replaced fast enough, nuclear vessels losing tiles, corvettes colliding with tankers, and now a relatively new Kilo-class submarine rendered helpless by a fuel leak. These failures expose a reality Putin would rather hide. His navy is rotting from within. If the Novorossiysk sinks, Russia won't just lose a submarine. It will lose its last significant undersea presence in the Mediterranean. That absence is critical. Submarines are supposed to operate unseen, threatening coastal nations silently from the depths. By contrast, a stranded vessel in NATO's backyard is the very opposite of deterrence. It's humiliation on display for the entire world. So what happens next? Russia might attempt to send ships to assist, but getting to the Strait of Gibraltar means passing through Spanish or Moroccan waters. Spain is a NATO member, while Morocco, though more neutral now, once provided military aid to Ukraine. Neither is likely to roll out the red carpet for Moscow. Perhaps Putin won't even try. After all, he once abandoned the Kursk's crew to their fate. He may do the same here, sacrificing the Novorossiysk and its sailors rather than admit weakness by accepting help. The symbolism is devastating. A submarine meant to terrify NATO now sits disabled at the edge of NATO waters. A navy that claims to be powerful is revealed as crumbling under sanctions, poor training and neglect, and a leader who once built his reputation on strength now faces humiliation on the world stage. The Novorossiysk incident isn't just about one submarine breaking down. It's a sign that Russia's undersea power, long hyped as one of the world's greatest threats, may actually be sinking fast. And NATO didn't even have to lift a finger.